And thank you very much for coming out here tonight. I really appreciate it. I know how cold it is. And very important, though, that we're all here to see, to hear from the President and CEO of Mackenzie Health, Altaf Stationwala. Where are you hiding, Altaf? Oh, sorry, I'm so focused on everybody. And thank you very much for offering to come here tonight and bring the community up to date on what's happening with the hospital. So I think this is going to be an informative evening. I'm looking forward to it because I have no idea. I haven't seen the presentation yet. So I'm looking forward to this and to help disseminate the information to the community at large, because I think this is really, really important for all of us. Before I turn this over to Altaf, since I've already taken up so much of your time, I do just want to extend regrets from Regional Councillor Marilyn and Regional Councillor Gino Rosati, who could not be here. They are where I was, and then they're off to another meeting. So again, thank you so much. I apologize, and I hope this little extra weight is worth it for you tonight. So, Altaf, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
So thank you, everyone, and thank you for your patience. It's a pleasure to be here. We do these information sessions often, and we find that it works much more effectively when we engage the respective councillors, because they can get a much better turnout than we usually can. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm I think a 13-year resident of Vaughan now, so I've been hearing about this hospital myself for many, many years. I've been at Mackenzie Altaf for 5 years, so this is a real honor to be working on this project and giving you an update. We titled this Creating World-Class Health Experience and giving you a perspective on where we're going around the hospital project. So our vision at Mackenzie Health, and you would see this in some of our literature, and this was generated about 3 years ago when we rebranded the hospital. This came from many of you, our residents. It was to create a world-class health experience. That's what you told us. That's what you wanted us to strive towards. You also said you wanted us to relentlessly improve the care that we provide to this community. So those are things that we work towards in our mission statement. And obviously you talked about our staff and the values you wanted them to espouse about excellence, leadership, and empathy. So these are key statements that we work towards at Mackenzie Health in the care that we provide. Some quick facts. So Mackenzie Health, formerly York Central Hospital. We've been in business for over 50 years now. We celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. We run 522 beds, so that's a mixture of acute care, complex care, rehab, and 168 long-term care beds. We do 90,000 emergent visits. That's last year. This year we will do over 95,000 emergent visits. We go by about 5,000 emergent visits a year. The Emerge that's at the Richmond Hill site was opened about 4.5 years ago. It was designed for 80,000, so we're already over capacity and obviously in need of expansion, and that's why the Vaughan Hospital is so important. You can see some of our other statistics. We are the second largest employer in the York region, Southwest York region, with over 3,500 staff and volunteers, and an operating budget of $277 million. This is a schematic we use to describe our locations. Obviously on the right is the current Richmond Hill Hospital. Actually on the left, on my right is the Vaughan Hospital, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But you may not know we have a number of community locations throughout the region. So for example, in Vaughan we have 2 locations where we provide chronic kidney disease, so that's dialysis services. So that's on Jane Street. We also have rehab and cardiac rehab and diabetes education in Vaughan. We have a number of services in Richmond Hill for mental health, as well as dialysis. And in Barrie, we actually provide acquired brain injury services. So these are just some of the other locations where we provide care and continue to grow services. In terms of the detail of what we provide, we are a large, busy community hospital. So things that you would expect in an emergency department, diagnostic and therapeutics, complex care, which is typically longer stay patients in an inpatient setting, ICU, medical, surgical procedures, long-term care, and women and child. So this is just some of the core services that we provide that you would expect in a community hospital. We also have a number of regional programs. So we are the regional provider for the York region for chronic kidney disease. So that's for dialysis and advanced care for renal failure. We are the regional provider for behavioral services. We are the regional provider for DASA, which is for domestic abuse and sexual assault, genetics, and for stroke as well. So we are the only hospital in the New York region that can administer TPA for stroke patients, and we provide follow-up care for that service as well. We also entered into a partnership about a year ago. So as we were growing our services, we knew that there were some things that we needed to partner for tertiary and cooperative care. We went out to about 8 different teaching hospitals in the region and ultimately chose Sunnybrook to partner with for some of those advanced services. And it's an important partnership because of the location of Sunnybrook, but also its reputation, and for some of those tertiary care services that we are not able to provide. So things like advanced cardiac surgery, things like advanced cancer treatment, burns, high-risk obstetrics. These are things that are important, and the continuity of that care with that facility is very, very important. So I'll give you an example. As much as we are the stroke center, some of our patients require neurosurgical support. In the past, we would have to go through critical and try to find a bed somewhere in the region or the province at certain points in time. And even as probably 5 or 6 years ago, we had difficulty accessing a bed and actually had to move a patient to Buffalo. So those were the challenges that we faced. Now we have dedicated access to that neurosurgical bed, and our clinicians have direct contact with the neurosurgeons at Sunnybrook, and it's seamless care for our community, for our patients, and much better outcomes. So those are the kind of partnerships that are important as we go forward, and Sunnybrook obviously provides us that opportunity. We've also received a number of awards, so as much as I will tell you we're a great hospital, we are one of a few hospitals with exemplary standing with Accreditation Canada. We also have stroke distinction with Accreditation Canada, and a number of awards in safety and nursing leadership. Now, as much as I can tell you, it's challenging to meet the growing needs of a community that is aging and has a large population growth. We are also challenged with our budget. So about 5 years ago, we had chronic deficits at York Central, now Mackenzie Health, and for the last 4 years, we've run surpluses. So we turn our finances around to the point where we actually now have $47 million in the bank. So we have no debt, no deficit, and cash in the bank to enable us to grow services and also invest in technology. And I'll talk a little bit about that, especially as we get into the Vaughan Hospital. The pressures of opening a second site put huge demands on our finances, and that's why we've started to build up this reserve to ensure that we can open Vaughan in the right way. And by the way, we're forecasting about a $2 million surplus this year as well, which will be March 31st. So, probably what you're more interested in is the Vaughan project and where we are at, and some of the things that we've been working on. So I'll spend the balance of the time on that, and then hopefully open it up for some questions. So I know the project's been talked about for a long, long time. I, being a resident of Vaughan, had heard about it for some time. But we actually didn't start the project until 2009. So there's been obviously lots of advocacy going on for Vaughan Hospital, but the ministry process for building a hospital didn't start until 2009. That's a business case to a 5-stage process that I can talk to. So as much as we've heard about it and there's been lots of advocacy, the actual work to get the approvals and the support of government really only started in 2009. I think that's an important thing to remember, because many people continue to say, well, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, the actual government process to build this hospital didn't start until 2009. We achieved our actual approval in 2011, so that's when the government actually committed the funding for this project. It's funded through Treasury, it's booked within government, and obviously as we build, that money will start to flow. We've also received $58 million to date to develop all of the specifications and go through the tendering process. So that's a commitment that the government has provided up front. We have shortlisted 3 bidders. I'll tell you who they are very shortly. So that happened in September 2014. So that's about a 6 or 7 month process to vet 3 consortia that can design, build, finance, and maintain this hospital over the next 30 years. We are RFP ready, so I will share with you all the detailed specifications that have gone into this project. That is basically completed, so we are just finalizing the ground lease with the city, and then we will be out to tender. So that's a lot of effort and work that's gone into creating these documents, and this is the work of our frontline staff. So We create user groups, experts in each of the clinical areas, and they help design and spec out this hospital. And that's the work that's gone to date. As I said, we're in the midst of finalizing the grounds for the city. That's a key piece. And it's a unique structure because in the province of Ontario, most hospitals, 90% of hospitals own the land that the hospital is on. A small percentage have ground leases, but that's typically with the province itself. So this is a very unique relationship that's being created, and it's obviously taking a little bit more time to iron out, but that's sort of our process going forward. And as you've seen in many of our literature, we are expected to open the hospital in 2019. As I said to you, go through numerous consultations, so we've consulted with over 3,500 people in the last 3 years through events like this, and we continue to do that. And if you have a group that's interested in hearing about the hospital, you can go on our website and contact us, and we'd be happy to come speak to you so we can share that information. So one of the things that we have to do with the province of Ontario is look at the distribution of services between the two hospitals. So it's important to understand that as much as a hospital is about the capital and the building, it's also about the operating dollars and the critical mass to support clinical services. So the residents of Vaughan currently receive care from probably 3 hospitals: Etobicoke General, York Finch, and Mackenzie Richmond Hill. And the challenge is the operating budgets for the residents of Vaughan are in those hospitals. And money doesn't move around very easily from one hospital to the other. So in theory, the residents of Vaughan are already being served. So you have to justify a business case and the funding support on the operating side to build that. So that's why we come up with this integrated model between the 2 hospitals. What was paramount and fundamental and what we fought for from day one was 2 full-service hospitals, one in Richmond Hill and one in Vaughan. And what's the definition of a full-service hospital? It has to have a 24/7 emergency department with beds. We felt that was important for both the community of Richmond Hill and for Vaughan. So we can see that in the orange are the services that are in both hospitals: emergency, critical care, imaging, surgery, pharmacy. These are all core services for a full-service hospital. And then we felt it was important to create regional programs between the two hospitals. And the rationale behind that is to have a sufficient critical mass to provide specialized care. So let me look at Vaughan as an example, and obstetrics. So a good obstetrical program needs to have at least 1,500 deliveries, and the larger your volume, when you start to get to 3,000, 3,500 deliveries, you can then start to subspecialize in obstetrics. So the benefit of subspecializing is you can bring different kinds of physicians and nurses to care for your community. So one of the things that we want to get into is more high-risk deliveries. So these are deliveries for mothers that may have diabetes or cardiac issues. Typically, right now, they go to Sunnybrook or to Mount Sinai Hospital. So with a larger volume, we can now attract a specialized obstetrician, they're called maternal fetal medicine specialists, to build a practice. If we had obstetrics on both hospital sites, we'd be doing about 1,500 deliveries. We wouldn't be able to attract that kind of clinician. So it's more efficient, and it's better care, and it's care closer to home because the 2 hospitals are only 8 kilometers apart. The same thing for pediatrics. Again, pediatricians are hard to find. We need to concentrate the services and provide it at a regional level. Mental health. And the same thing can be said for the Richmond Hill site, where we put things like chronic kidney disease and integrated stroke care and seniors care. So that's something that we've been communicating for about 3 years now as we've been building this project. So where are we in this process? So I said to you that there is a prescriptive process that the government puts forward. Every hospital in the province goes through this. So the projects that you see right now, the Humber River project and Oakville, for example, had to go through these 5 stages. And I would argue that we've gone through these 5 stages very quickly, starting in 2009. So we've completed stage 1, which was a proposal and business case, a more detailed planning phase with a functional program, which describes every single room and space in that hospital and, in fact, scopes out the size of that hospital. Stage 3 is what I'm going to share with you today. That's the detailed specifications, the tender documents that provide the detail for the bidders to design, build, and ultimately maintain this hospital. And then the next phase that we're going to get into is the actual procurement, where they bid and put forward their respective designs, and then we select the preferred bidder that then ultimately builds and then maintains this hospital. So the difference in this hospital and all the new ones that have been built in the last 10 years is it's a design, build, finance, and maintain model. So the benefit of that in particular is that the maintain piece for the next 30 years, we've already built into the price of this project the fact that in 30 years we get a brand new roof. We're not stuck with a 30-year-old building. It's maintained to the highest and most current standard. And I think that's a big benefit because we see many aging hospitals, even the Richmond Hill Hospital, we have to find money from our operating budget to fix the roof, to make repairs. In this model, that money is already committed by government upfront. So we have a new hospital in year 30 already paid for. So it'll take us about a year to go through that procurement, and then we will get into stage 5, which is construction. So Humber and Oakville are nearing the end of stage 5. So that's the ministry process. On the top is the Infrastructure Ontario process. So Infrastructure Ontario is an agency of government. They have been created to, in effect, support ministries to build infrastructure. So case in point, if you've been driving around the 400 Sears highways, you see the new service centers that have been built. That was Infrastructure Ontario that built that for the Ministry of Transportation. Schools, colleges, courthouses, and most particularly hospitals. So they support us in the transaction phase. So they do the due diligence up front on the project. They actually support us in the tendering process and the qualification process. And they will be there during the implementation as well. And the reason behind that is hospitals in particular don't have construction expertise. How many projects does a hospital CEO do in a lifetime, or hospital management? So they provide that expertise to support respective ministries, and in particular in this case hospitals, deliver projects on time and on budget. And since IO's been in place, the majority of their projects have been on time and on budget. The Pan Am Games is another example of things that IO is working on. And then obviously we get into the operating period. So that's the project. That's where we started. We are on that start point right now, about to go into stage 4, which is procurement. And we have uploaded all of our documents onto the infrastructure website that will then be made available to the bidders. So all that work is done, and I'm going to tell you in greater detail what that work was. So these are the 3 consortia. It took us about 6 or 7 months to qualify them that are ready and raring to go. They're calling every day, can we get the tender documents, ready to build this hospital. So the first group is Plenary Health, and they're actually doing the Humber project as we speak. So the constructor is PCL, and then they have a consortia of financing and facility management, Johnson Controls. But the 2 core groups, Plenary, Stantec being the architects. And again, if you're driven by 401 and Kiel, they've done the Humber project. On the bottom is another group called Hospital Infrastructure Partners. So they are actually finishing up the Oakville project. And that's a construction site at West Dawn with Fengate on the capital management side, Parkin on the architects, and you can see some of the other consortia. In the middle is Bonnfield. Now Bonnfield is part of Turner Construction from the US. Again, another strong bid. And I think they just recently won St. Michael's Hospital as well. So we are very happy that we have 3 solid teams ready to bid this project with the expertise and the depth of understanding healthcare, understanding hospitals, and delivering this project. We've also been very busy on another dimension of this hospital, which is the equipment. So we issued a tender in 2014 for the equipment. We received 4 proposals, and we're now negotiating with 2 vendors to finalize the big ticket technology. So these are things like your medical imaging departments, your operating suites, the very high intensity, expensive equipment, and we will select that hopefully in the next few months. So that's another big element of this project that we've almost completed, and we'll have a preferred vendor ready to go. The reason we want that up front is pieces of equipment are very intrusive to the hospital. So you don't want to be speccing your CT or MRI after it's been designed, the room's been designed. You need to understand the loads that the floors need to bear. You need to understand how much heat that equipment's going to give off. So you need those vendors defined up front so that when you're actually designing the hospital, that information is being provided to the constructor, so you don't have pieces of equipment that don't fit in the rooms, which does happen in many hospitals when that isn't identified up front. As well, information technology. So hospitals are very reliant on being digital. We have less and less paper. We have more and more of our images that are digital, and we need a solid IT system. So we are also in the midst of tendering that, and are now down to 3 shortlisted vendors. The reason we have the ability and the confidence to put out these tenders now is it goes back to that balance sheet that I showed you. So if we weren't generating surpluses and a solid financial position, it would be very hard for the board to support me in going out on these tender calls. So the fact that we manage our finances well enables us to go ahead on these pieces. So the output specification. So this is an inordinate amount of information. It's over 2,600 pages, and it has a number of dimensions. So it has the clinical specifications of the facility, the technical specifications of the actual building, and the facility management components. We are required to put what is called an illustrative schematic design. So this is a design-build kind of project, so we don't actually, if you're familiar with stipulated sum projects, but we actually give the contractor all the detailed information. We're going to come back with 3 different bits, but we provide basically a narrative or words that describe how we want the hospital to look. But to help the bidders, we also provide an illustrative schematic design. So we actually do a design that's compliant to our specifications to give them a sense of what we want the hospital to look like, and how we want the rooms to work, and how we want certain departments to be adjacent to other departments. And I'm going to share some of that with you. So we already have an example of a design of what this hospital will look like. It won't look like that because each of the bidders will come up with 3 different designs. But it's a test to see, do our specifications work, and can it all fit together and give us the functionality and some of the principles that I will share with you. We have to have all of our detailed equipment defined now. So every single piece of equipment that goes in every room has already been spec'd and identified, so that's completed. We have to provide room-by-room details of what we want the space to look like. So the floor finishes, the wall coverings, the ceiling tiles. And then we have a 30-year contract, so that's called the project agreement, so that also has to be finalized and issued with the tender documents. So that's another massive piece of paper that lawyers love to spend a lot of time and charge lots of money for, right? And that is also completed. So this is a sample of the illustrative schematic design. So it gives you, it's a little blurry, but it gives you every single room and how that room looks on a particular floor and a particular unit. So it's basically a worked up design of the entire hospital. So that's been completed, and it matches the output specifications that the bidders will have. So that, again, was a huge amount of work, and we did a lot of interesting things. Obviously, we like to do things economically. So when we, for example, put a design spec for an ICU room, we said, well, let's test it out. So we actually built mock rooms out of cardboard to full scale, put the beds in, put all the technology in, and started to test whether some of our theories and thoughts around sort of a very innovative design would work. And we spent probably months and did that with all of the key rooms, operating suites, inpatient rooms, imaging suites, to test some of that. So that's helped us inform this illustrative schematic design, which the bidders will get as part of the tender documents. So we have a list, 56,000 pieces of individual equipment, and it's spec'd so that the bidders understand where that equipment will go, how it will fit into the design. Going back to the principle that if the pieces of furniture and equipment don't fit in the rooms, we have some real issues. So speccing that early on is important, and it's also obviously enabled us to go out on the big ticket technology items like MRIs, CTs, operating suites, so that's already embedded in our documents. So room templates. So we also then give the bidders samples of how the pieces of equipment fit into those spaces. So we have 100 room templates. So for example, we'll have one room template for an inpatient room. We'll have them for operating suites, emergency department cubicles. Every room in that hospital has a template, and they tend to be the more complex spaces that we specify, so that the bidders have a clear understanding of what we want. So then we have 1,000 data sheets. And these are, again, as I was saying, the very detailed specifications of what kind of floor do we want. Do we want linoleum floor, terrazzo floor, what kind of floor goes in what kind of room. Do we need non-slip flooring in the OR suites? So that all of that has been spec. The kinds of wall coverings, so obviously infection control is very important in a hospital. So the kinds of finishes that we have, the kinds of paints that we use, these are all been spec, and again provide direction to the bidders to understand what our requirements are and ultimately what they're bidding and the price that they're going to put on this project. So what's also different about this project is it's a performance-based contract. So the consortium that ultimately wins this project is also held accountable for room performance. So if a particular room, a high-risk room like an OR, goes below or above a certain temperature, it causes all kinds of issues in terms of patient safety and patient care. If that room doesn't perform according to spec, the consortium is penalized. So they get a monthly payment, and if they don't hit a performance spec, we penalize them for that. Same thing with basic things like power, power, water. All these dimensions are built into our contract, into this project agreement, and we have 28,000 different room ratings for everything under the sun in terms of those performance specs. And that's what gets managed over the 30 years of this contract. And it also, built into that, is the life cycle that I told you about. So 2019, we get a hospital that looks new. 30 years from now, it has the same degree of performance. The roof is of the same vintage. It has another 10 or 20 years of performance left into it. And this is all based into those ratings. So again, a lot of work in specifying that. Obviously, lots of consultants and technical experts that have helped us create those specs. So, in the grand scheme of things, when we look at this project, it will take us about, from start to finish, 9 years to get it done. And it may seem like a very, very long time. And I know it is to the committee that's been waiting for this, but this is pretty fast. When you look at the complexity of what we're talking about, and when you look at the fact that it's a hospital that has to go through various provincial approval processes, the 5 stages that we have to go through, and ultimately, the life cycle of a hospital is 100 years. The Richmond Hill Hospital is 50 years. We've had 4 different expansions, major expansions to that hospital already. And I'll talk about how the land is very important to ensure that we have the flexibility for future expansions going forward. So when you look at the relationship between the planning and the building versus the long-term operating period, it's critical that we understand the perspective of both. And that capital, so this first 9-year piece, the billions of dollars that we're going to pour into capital is minute compared to the operating dollars that will go over the life of this hospital. Typically, capital for a hospital represents about 5% of the total spend. So it's the operating dollars that really matter, and that's where, if we don't build it efficiently or sustainably, it becomes very challenging to maintain that facility. So we spend a lot of time on that, and I'll share some of those elements with you. So, the land and the parcels that we're going to talk about. So we're looking now north, Major Mac, Jane to your right. Block 2 is the 40 acres where the hospital will be built. So that's the primary parcel for this first phase of this project. Block 3 is something we work with the city to provide us another 10 acres for future expansion, which brings a total allocation of 50 acres to the hospital. So that's comparable. If you've looked at Oakville, they have a 50-acre site, some similar suburban type hospital. And we believe that with that 50 acres, we have room to grow and build multiple phases of expansion going forward. The balance of the blocks are part of the city's health precinct plan, where other health-related services will be located. And these are things that obviously we will collaborate with the city on. But for the purposes of today's discussion, I'm focusing on Block 2 and Block 3. And the ground lease that we're negotiating with the city will articulate those two blocks primarily. But we'll also ensure that other blocks are connected to the ground lease, because infrastructure like stormwater ponds, for example, I think are on Block 6 and Block 8. So those are things that we need to connect to for the hospital to be viable. So this is an integrated precinct plan, and obviously all these pieces have to work together for the hospital to be viable. You can see the road network, so there's a ring road around the site. If you've driven along Major Mac, and sorry for the disruption over the last couple of months, but a lot of infrastructure work has gone in, and I think there's actually now, there's a light, there's a signalized light. It's not actually working yet, but you can see where the main connection will be that is actually called Street B on your slide. So that's the layout. Again, it's a good location, good accessibility with Highway 400, which obviously makes it readily accessible to residents both north and south. Major Mac's a bit of a challenge. I drive it every day, but we're told it will get better as that road expands. That discussion's for another day. So some of the early works, and you would have seen this if you're driving by. So regrading of the terrain is a big piece. So you can see there's massive amounts of dirt right now. And obviously there's even remediation of some of the soil because there's certain standards that have to be put in place for a hospital. Roadways are being created. There's a replacement easement. If you've driven, if you've ever sort of gone north from Canada's Wonderland, there's that massive ring road around the site. That easement has to be replaced with a smaller easement for Cedar Fair or Wonderland so that they can still offload traffic. So that road is being created as well. Stormwater ponds, we have 2 of them, and it's a fundamental requirement for any large piece of infrastructure, and those are being dug as we speak. So I'm now going to get into the detail of the actual project and share some of the design features that we're looking at. So the specifications, the 2,600 pages I talked about, I'm now going to give you some of the concepts that we're putting forward to really, we think, build the best hospital in the province, if not the country. We really looked at things very differently. And the benefit we have is we have a testing environment in the current Richmond Hill site. So a lot of these concepts we've tried in certain areas to say, does it work, does it make sense? But we're really excited because we think we've really pushed the bar to create something very unique and very special, and we think state-of-the-art. So we felt it would be more prudent to have a more compact design. So we have, in effect, a podium, which is a couple of stories in height, and then we have a tower built upon that. So a lot like Humber and Oakville, if you've seen those hospitals. And it just makes it more efficient to run, but more accessible for residents, and then takes advantage of the land in a more unique way so that we can build future phases, future wings going out into the future. So what you're seeing here in that H is basically an inpatient tower with a podium underneath. And you can see some of the concepts of where the parking facility will be and some of the green space. And we purposefully kept it a little bit of a distance from Major Mac because we need a reasonable amount of space to have space to offload patients and families. And what's the biggest challenge? That ring road to the hospital is always so tight that there's never any space to manage sort of the egress and the access. So we think that's really been achieved in this approach that we've taken forward. So, I always get in trouble when I try to steal these images from our staff because they say, but everybody's going to think that's how the hospital's going to look. So it's not going to look like this. This is just an illustration, but this illustration is actually consistent with our specifications. So remember I said there's an illustrative schematic design? Well, that's what this is. So if you took the specification, you could build a hospital like that. Each of the 3 consortia are in fact, in a design competition. They're all going to come up with 3 different schemes, but it gives you a sense of the scale and some of the features that we're looking at. So you can see the size of the podium, so that's the first 2 or 3 floors, and then you can see the tower. The tower will be about 11 stories in height, and that's where the bulk of the inpatient beds will be. You can see another important feature, glazing. So if you've had the benefit of driving for, I think, one of the best hospitals with that kind of approach is Bridgepoint Hospital. If you've driven along the DVP, you can see some of the glazing there. Fundamental to healthcare is access to natural light. There's been tons of studies done that show that patients are very disoriented when they're in an inpatient setting, and when they don't have access to natural light or ample amount of it, they just do not get better at a reasonable rate. So that's core to healing, that's core to being in a therapeutic environment. That's even very important to our staff that work 12-hour shifts. Never having access to light for them is a very challenging thing. So it's a fundamental principle of wellness, and most of the new hospitals that you see have huge amount of glazing and access to natural light. So what's the size of this hospital? It's the same size as Oakville in terms of the absolute size. The initial capacity is 350 beds. Now, we were able to convince government to let us build a number of shell floors. So those floors can be used in the future to build more inpatient beds. So in total, with all the space that we built, we can go up to 550 beds. That's a very large acute care hospital. And obviously, with the growth and the demands of this community, we think it's very reasonably sized. However, I promise you that there will be future expansions. People don't believe me, but when have you not seen a hospital going through an expansion? And that's why those additional acres and increasing time is so important to enable us to grow. But this is a very, very good start, a very large hospital, 1.2 million square feet. It's massive. Do you want to take questions now, Marilyn, or should we?
How far from the end of
about another 10 minutes. I'm happy to take questions
Who
now.
has a question? Is it a clarification or?
It's just a question about the expansion, and has the design already taken into consideration how the future existing hospital will be integrated with that future space from a flow perspective?
So the government requires us to build a master plan and master program that goes out 100 years. So we've actually, not only have we had to show how we would expand in the future, we've actually had to even show them how we could regenerate a complete new hospital on the site in that 100-year time frame. So that's all about the approvals, and that's why it takes so long, because the architects and the engineers and the consultants spend a huge amount of time demonstrating to the ministry that our design works. And more importantly, the investment they're making now has the flexibility to be used well into the future. So absolutely. So I'm now going to give you some of the concepts. And this is not just kind of nice to have, these are fundamentally in our specifications. So this is what is going to be bid in this project. So as much as I say there's a lot of glazing on the outside, it's still a massive facility. 1.2 million square feet means that there's a lot of interior space without access to any natural light. So we are requiring a number of courtyards throughout this facility to bring in natural light. We're looking at dedicated elevators and jacuzzi tubs in the eccentrical area. We are looking at special rooms. So the fundamental principle, for example, of care is all about now ensuring that parents are more involved. So if you remember NICUs, if you've ever been in a neonatal intensive unit, it's just a large room with a bunch of bassinets. The modern design of these rooms is actually to have space for the parents to stay overnight, and the parents are now involved in that care. So what you're seeing is a lot more space for families and for parents to be involved in that care. Same thing can be said for critical care. We're also looking at efficient design. So what is key is the size of this hospital. So one of the features is 80% private rooms, which means that the floor plates are massive and huge. And it means that our staff are going to be challenged to just have one storage room or one utility room. So we're looking at decentralized stations to make it more efficient. So we've actually gone as far as counting footsteps and the typical shift for a typical nurse to ensure how do we minimize the number of steps they take so that they're actually able to be around the patient more as opposed to running around trying to find something. So the fundamental principle here is decentralized care stations and supplies available in Algos. Clinical adjacency. So here's an interesting exercise that every hospital has their planning goes through. So core departments have to be next to each other. And the department that everybody wants to be next to is imaging, because in most cases, imaging is one of the core services. So imaging, emergency, ORs, these tend to have to be close to each other, and we try to ensure that from an efficiency perspective, and more so from a safety perspective, those adjacencies are there and they're specified. We're looking at nurse servers. So these are, in effect, storage areas that open both on the outside in the hallway, but also on the inside of the room. One of the challenges that we face with the new infection control standards is it's difficult for a nurse or provider to go in and out. They have to sort of put on the protective equipment and take it off, and put it on and take it off. This is now a pass-through that enables certain supplies to go right through, so people can stay in the room longer and not leave the patient. So this is something we actually tried with cardboard, and we're working that through in terms of this design. Another real issue, especially if you look at the older hospitals, so if you've ever had pleasure of coming to the Richmond Hill Hospital, you'll see that long corridor, and we are wheeling people between operating procedures, patients, supplies, everything goes through one corridor. It's not very patient-centered. So what we have now is a separation of public and private. If you've ever been to Disneyland, you'll notice you never see anything moving around Disneyland on the surface, because they've actually built underground tunnels to move most of the supplies and product. Same concept here. So there's a separation of public and private, so that in fact patients and families are not seeing things that they don't need to see, which is supplies and other things we need around. So we call it the front and the back of the house concept. Standardization. So this is key, and this is key more so from a patient safety perspective. So one of the biggest challenges we had was, if you're familiar with an inpatient bed, there's a thing called a head wall, which is where all the medical gases are. And if they're not configured in the same way, providers having to reorientate themselves every single time as they get removed, and it causes huge issues of safety. You want things to be standardized. You want to know that everything is in the same place in every single room. So we've made huge efforts to ensure that the rooms are exactly the same so that we can minimize risk and make it more efficient. We've really made an effort to integrate some of the big pieces of technology. So you'll see interventional radiology suite and our peri-op program. So that's ensuring that it's embedded and it's efficient and it's located in the right location. So one of the things that we fought really hard with the ministry on was to make sure that the adjacency of that service was close to surgery, because it's a procedure space. Regional stroke centers. So stroke typically has a longer length of stay, and we need to ensure that patients can get better and be more autonomous and have some ability to have some independent living. So we actually put that right into those rooms. So one of the other things is to ensure that our principles of excellence, leadership, and empathy are built right into there. So one of the great sort of benefits that we have in the last 5 or 6 years is telemedicine. So that enables someone to remotely access an expert anywhere in the city or the country or the world, and actually dialogue around the treatment. So we can talk to a specialist at sick days and say, how do we manage this particular baby? Clinician is right there. So we've actually embedded that technology in many of our clinical spaces so that we can actually do virtual consults with a specialist without having to move that patient. We've also tried to be very respectful of our diverse community. So things like the SABA elevator or Wadu facilities for our Muslim patients and families have been built into this space. We also know that we are challenged with some of our bariatric patients. Our bathrooms are not equipped, our other facilities are not equipped to manage their specific needs. So we have seating and other pieces of equipment that actually help us manage those types of patients and visitors as well. So flexible design. So healthcare changes so fast, and as hard as we're working to make it reflective of the way we practice today, it's still going to be wrong because things just change so fast. So we have ensured that as much as possible, our design is flexible so that if we have to do renovations, we can do them efficiently, and we haven't boxed ourselves in. So for example, ED departments are very challenging if they're very fixed in their design, and we have a lot of hard walls, for example. So we've made our ED very flexible so that if there was an outbreak, we can isolate, or if we had a massive disaster, we can open up the whole ED to deal with buses of ambulances coming to deal with car accidents, something of that nature. Dialysis is a challenge because in many cases plumbing is required for those types of spaces, and you have to plan that up front. So we have put plumbing in many locations so that we can actually dialyze patients, whether they're in an inpatient setting, whether they're in an ICU bed. We've also, and this is always a debate, so do you look at sort of hard fixtures or do you look at modular furniture? And we've done a bit of both, but mostly on the modular side to give us the flexibility for future expansion. And what we've also done is we've created a lot of soft space through the facility. So the softest space in a hospital is the CEO's office. So it's right next to a clinical space so that they can boot me out and open and expand clinical services. But those are the types of things that we've considered to ensure that as we grow, we can relocate administration to another facility if we have to, or a private lease space, so that we can continue to focus on the clinical growth that we need to do. So integrated delivery across the sites. So technology and connecting the two hospitals is very important, and we've done that. We've looked at interactive wayfinding, and as we look at the two hospitals, we want to make sure that wherever a patient enters, whether it's Richmond Hill or Vaughan, is integrated so we can transfer patients if we have to in a seamless fashion. And we built all that technology into the hospital to manage those dimensions. So obviously, being environmentally conscious, and you're in a building that is, I think, LEED's goal. These are things that are fundamental. They cost more, but I think it's our duty to our future generations to be responsible. So we are going for LEED designation at a minimum silver, and we're building all kinds of systems and processes to deal with the environment, whether it's smart technology around lighting, whether it's more sophisticated waste management technologies, and obviously trying to conserve compact designs where it's appropriate. So technology. So people always ask, why can't healthcare be more like other industries, whether it's banking or airlines? And we are moving in that direction. We are actually launching a patient portal in the next few months that will give you access to all of your vital information, your blood work, at the same time the physicians see it. But we're looking at more mobile devices, so why can't you on your mobile device make your own registration or book your own appointments? These are the types of technology that we're looking at, handheld technology for our providers. Automated medication distribution, so massive carousels that pack the pills, barcode the pills, and ensure that when the pill is dispensed, the barcode matches the bracelet on the patient, so there's no possibility there. These are the types of things that we're going to bring to the hospital, but more importantly, we're testing today on the Richmond Hill site. So as I said, 80% of our rooms will be single rooms. And that's primarily because of infection control. We are very challenged in managing infections, and it's becoming more and more challenging as we have greater C. difficile and MRSA in the community, which then comes into the hospital, and these patients have to be isolated. It also obviously provides a much better setting for families and patients when we don't have to share them. We have smart beds with all kinds of technology in them, and we've actually already bought a whole fleet of them now, and are testing them, and obviously modifying our specifications for the Vaughan Hospital. We're also looking at staff wellness. So we know that we have an aging workforce, but we also know that we want to attract the best and the brightest to this hospital. So we have to give the right amenities to attract these very skilled professionals. We have other choices, but we want them to come to Vaughan. So these are some of the things that we're building in. You've probably read a lot about staff safety. There's been a lot of situations where nurses have been harmed. So we're also building in lots of ability for safety for our staff to have specialized duress products. So we've actually already bought some technology that we're trialing in Richmond Hill for that right now. So one of the other things is keeping our staff current. And it's hard for staff to take time away to keep their skills up for concurrent education. So we're building a lot of on-site learning for them, simulation labs, the ability to do conferences virtually so that they can stay current and keep up with the changing practices in healthcare. And these are other things that we've obviously built into the hospital. Now, I've talked about innovation, and innovation is a scary word because many times you buy technology and when you actually get into putting it into place in a hospital, it doesn't work. So we've adopted this practice of applied innovation at Mackenzie Health, and we've actually created a dedicated inpatient unit where we're trialing a lot of these technologies. So we're calling it the Smart Hospital, and we're doing very, very basic things, and this is technology that we've already purchased that we're trialing right now. So imagine an environment where you know exactly who's coming into your room. You have a screen in front of you, your television screen, that says nurse so-and-so has entered the room. Right now, you probably can't even tell who's a doctor, who's a nurse, who's a support staff member. So these are things that we're trying to ensure that you as a patient or family member knows what's going on, and we can build that with technology. So even today, we have on one unit, we have RFID tags on our nurses and our providers that basically does that. And we're testing this as we speak. A second monitor will tell you what exactly has to happen with that patient. So now, the provider knows what the next step in the care process is. All the information they need is there at their fingertips. Again, It's not a pipe dream, it's happening right now. We're trialing some of this technology. It also gives a lot of alerts, so medication alerts, vital signs, allergens, all that information can be displayed. So some of it will be in the room, some of it will be on handheld devices. You'll probably hear in the next few weeks, so we've entered into a very significant partnership with Cisco, with BlackBerry, and with a few other vendors to be the first in Canada testing a lot of these technologies today, so that when we open up Vaughan, all of this is in place. The biggest issue we're going to face on opening day is the risk. We cannot be introducing new pieces of technology and opening the hospital at the same time. So we have to get to a place where our staff are comfortable with these new tools so that we're not putting patients at risk on opening day. So everything's got to be humming. The first patient we treat has to be as safe as the 10,000 patient. That's the mantra that we're working with. So we're ensuring that all of the smart technology that we're putting, we're trialing and testing. And we've actually said in 2017 and 2018, in that time frame, we're going to freeze all the technology, and that's what we're going to go into Vaughan with. We're not going to introduce new risks into the environment. So one of the other things, and I know it's a challenge because I hear from my neighbors, so 5 years is a long time. What are we going to do in the meantime? The Richmond Hillside is chock-a-block with patients. We're struggling every day. So we continue to bring on new services in some of those lease locations that I talked about. So the chronic kidney disease program on Jane Street just opened about 3 or 4 years ago. We've added neurohealth sciences on that location as well, just about 2 years ago on the 3rd floor above the dialysis center. We have introduced diabetes education, cardiac rehab, and DASA on Center Street in Vaughan as well. That's about 4 or 5 years old. We just opened a health link office at our Jane Street site. So that's a new service for high-risk patients and complex patients. We've onboarded about 40 patients. That's also a location in Vaughan. And we are going to be opening an urgent care center in Vaughan in the next 3 or 4 months. So the current hospital doesn't have the capacity to deal with all the emergency volume. So I can't tell you where. It's very close to being finalized. But somewhere very close, there will be the equivalent of an emergency department for less acute patients. So similar to what you see at the Branson site of North General, similar to what you see at the Queensway site of Trillium. That will deal with about 30 or 40,000 visits a year, giving us some relief to deal with the growth and the volume pressures. So we want to continue to engage you, and these are some of the upcoming sessions. Again, we find it's more effective working through the respective councillors. They can get a much better turnout at sessions like this. And these are just some future dates. And we will continue to advertise them in the Vaughan Citizen. And if you have a group that you'd like us to meet with, you can go on our website and book it, and we will get back to you. And we're happy to give you an update. So that's where we stand today on the project. And I think Marilyn's going to moderate, but we're happy to answer any questions.